welcome to New Jersey Politics with Laura Jones. I am Laura Jones, and we are so glad to have you here. Election Day 2024 has come and gone, and as always, New Jersey's making headlines with some results that surprised both Republicans and Democrats. Standing by is Micah Rasmussen, director of the Rebovich Institute for New Jersey Politics at Rider University. First, though, let's bring in David Wildstein, editor of the New Jersey Globe, to break it all down for us. David, it's good to see you. All right, well, let's go through all the races, and I want to talk about expectations versus what we experienced first when it comes to President. President Trump did far better than many people were expecting. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I got it wrong. I mean, I thought that that Harris was going to win New Jersey, in 15, 16, 18 points, just like Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden did, and he overperformed. He exceeded everybody's expectations, and he won in places that you wouldn't expect him to win. I mean, he won Bayonne, he won Secaucus. He did really well in North Bergen, in Passaic County, just places that you would not have expected. He's pulling in middle class voters, and he pulled in Hispanics, and that has just made all the difference in this performance for him.
Yeah, and I know over the days and weeks and months ahead, people will be looking at poring over the data to see what went wrong. But, do you have an indication of what went wrong? Are the polls just getting it wrong? Was voter turnout more of an issue, or were there more voters than expected? Early voting, like what happened for the polls to get it so wrong? Because, again, this should have been what people thought would be a double-digit blowout for Donald Trump. It just wasn't. We're in the single digits.
Well, first of all, the polls were absolutely wrong, and there's no doubt about it, because they gave us numbers, and that doesn't measure up to where these candidates performed. The problem is, and you hear smarter people than me on national TV talk about this. They're not getting the models right. They're not understanding who's turning out, and the poll is only as good as its anticipated turnout model, and they're just not there on it. The other thing is, in politics, the last thing you ever want to do is underperform. And what happened here, both for Harris and for Trump, is they wrote off New Jersey. Both of them wrote off New Jersey. There was not a fight for New Jersey's 14 electoral votes, because neither thought it was going to go any other way than New Jersey being a blue state, as it's been since 1992. So you had Jersey playing the role of exporter state. And both sides, both parties, were sending busloads of people every weekend to go canvass in Pennsylvania, because that was the big deal. And they needed New Jersey's bodies more than they needed the votes. It'd be easy to go back and say, well, if Trump had done internal polls in New Jersey, he'd have seen this. He might have been able to catch this and then proactively go campaign. But if he had done that, then Harris would have said, well, maybe I have a problem in New Jersey. I better go pay attention to New Jersey. At that level, they don't fall for some little head fake. Yeah. So they knew what they were doing. And look, at the end of the day, Kamala Harris won New Jersey. She got 14 electoral votes, and she didn't spend any money doing it. So it wasn't a bad strategy for her. But now Trump, and we all know that Donald Trump, who spends almost as much time in New Jersey as he does in Florida, he's got an affinity for New Jersey. He understands New Jersey. He for better or for worse, was a big investor in Atlantic City real estate for a lot of years. So and we all know with Trump that he also looks at numbers, and he knows what he's looking at in New Jersey. So he's going to devour these numbers, and he's going to know how he did in all these areas, and he's going to know that he did better in Somerset County, where his golf club is. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, everything was wrong except that the outcome turned out exactly what you thought. Didn't matter, it doesn't matter how you get to 14 electoral votes as long as you get there, and the Democrats got there.
Yeah, and I definitely am curious to, and we can talk about this later, how this could impact what we may see of President-elect Trump in New Jersey when it comes to the gubernatorial race, which is already going to be underway. But first, let's talk about Andy Kim, Curtis Bashaw. Again, Andy Kim won, but not by the numbers that people necessarily thought. What's your take?
Yeah, my take is what you refer to a Senate candidate who didn't win by as much as people thought he would. You call him a senator, and
Right.
he's going to go to Washington, and he's got 6 years in the United States Senate. So I don't think he's going to lose a lot of sleep over it, and I think his numbers will be okay. But again, this is, they all told us that Andy Kim, when they say they, I mean the pollsters, everybody said, and I thought it too. So I'm not looking to put responsibility on anybody else. I always thought Andy Kim was going to win the race. And I was right. He was going to win the race. The pollsters were right. He was going to win the race. What we were wrong on is the margins. And that, that is where the delving into all the details, that's where the minutia matters, is where did he lose it? And, why did Kim's margin in a place like Passaic County go down so much over where past Senate candidates are going to be? I think it's just, he also got caught up in what was happening at the top of the ticket. And if he thought he was in trouble, he'd have run a different campaign. He'd have spent more money on television. He'd put more money into field operations. He didn't behave as a candidate who was frightened because there was no indication that he should be. And at the end of the day, he gets to go to the United States Senate. I mean, Laura, maybe for the next 30 years, right, he gets to go to the U.S. Senate, and who cares what his margin was here?
Right. Another race, the congressional race, when you talk about spending money, where they did spend some money, it was in the 7th Congressional District, Tom Kean versus Sue Altman. Tom Kean, the Republican incumbent, won in a race that was actually a little further apart. He had more of a buffer than some might have thought. Democrats thought, man, this is a seat that we might be able to flip from Republican back to the Democratic side. Did not happen.
Yeah, and Kane's margin was more than what people thought. It's sort of a function of these two candidates thinking they can win and fighting it out, and not leaving any stone unturned. They were both good candidates. This is a district that was drawn to be Republican. This was a Democratic map where they gave up this seat. That contributed to Tom Malinowski losing to Tom Kean 2 years ago. Again, this is, I don't know, maybe it was never going to be close. And maybe the poll was wrong, and the poll caused people to have to spend more money on this race. And maybe that, built up the margin rather than decreased it. I don't know. But these, these numbers are probably where a Republican in that district should be, and who, we wouldn't have seen. I think Donald Trump, when all these numbers are done, he will have won the 7th Congressional District. And that's a district that Joe Biden won by 4 points. And I think before the map was redrawn, he had won the 7th by 12 points. Yeah. So, this is just sort of a little bit of a realignment in New Jersey politics.
Yeah. Looking up to the 9th Congressional District, the seat that was held by the late Congressman Bill Pascrell with Nellie Poe versus Billy Prempa, that one was a little closer than people thought. That, again, that's part of Hudson County. And really, you would think that would be a place where it's not even close. But there's a high concentration of Hispanics, and people are saying, hey, nationally, Trump really was attracting the Hispanic vote, and we saw that play out in Nellie Poe versus Billy Prempa.
Yeah, I mean, Billy Prempa has defied expectations before, and he held Bill Pascrell to 10 points 2 years ago. I think he benefited from, first of all, he benefited from a lot from what he did for himself, but he benefited by Trump. And but the part that I don't want to forget as we delve into these details is in a district where Hispanics make up a large portion of the population. Yeah, Trump did better, but Harris still won Hispanics. And Nellie Poe is now the first Latina in New Jersey history to go to Congress. So, I'm not, I want to see all the, I want to get down and dirty on these numbers.
Yeah.
And I want to look at, not just town by town, but sort of precinct by precinct and overlay them with their demographics before I sort of understand this. I think there was a lot going on, and quite frankly, a big part of it is this campaign started late. Bill Pascrell died at the end of August. There wasn't a big runway for Nellie Poe to get her name known, outside the small piece that was in her legislative district for all these years. And she didn't have a lot of time to raise money. Prempa didn't have a lot of money. And so what you had was two candidates virtually unknown. And what it caused voters to do is say, well, do I want the Democrat or do I want the Republican? It was more of a generic vote at this point.
Yeah. Republicans are happy with the results, but what I'm hearing from you is we don't know if this is necessarily showing a trend, or even in one of your articles, as you put it, if this is a new normal of New Jersey maybe not being as blue as we thought it is. It's too early to tell, is what you're saying. Do I have that right?
Laura, I don't want to age you or myself
It's okay.
too much.
It's all
But
good.
we're both doing this a very, very long time in New Jersey, and what we know is that in New Jersey, a presidential election is simply the opening act to a governor's race. And we all look at it in the context of how is this going to affect who's occupying the governor's office next year. If you had said, and I've been hearing about this from Democrats and Republicans since this election ended. If you would ask the same people on Monday, if Donald Trump's in the White House, does that mean that the winner of the Democratic primary is going to be the next governor? Universally, people would have agreed with that. Now they're not sure, because now Trump has done better than people thought he would in New Jersey. And now they're not sure that a general election with a Republican in the White House, might actually favor the Republicans.
Yeah. The race for governor 2025, it's on. It's well underway. David Wildstein of the New Jersey Globe, thank you so much for coming on to break down the results of election night. Thank you.
Thanks for having me, Laura.
Nothing has ever been handed to me. I've had to work for it. On the field and off the field. Kane worked with me, guided me, helped me climb higher to get where I belong, to change my life.
Hey, welcome to the team.
Cougars climb higher. Kane University.
The 2024 election has brought some fascinating developments across the country, and New Jersey has been no exception. A lot of people are watching what happened this week, especially with a high-stakes race for governor next year. Joining us to unpack it all is Micah Rasmussen, director of the Rebovich Institute for New Jersey Politics at Rider University. Micah, good to see you.
You too, Laura. Thanks for having me.
All right. Well, it's hard to believe the election is now behind us, the 2024 election at least. So
there's always one in front of you in New Jersey.
There's always, and we've already started the race to 2025. But looking back at this past Tuesday, what are your big takeaways, trends that you noticed in New Jersey election results, and what, if anything, particularly surprised you?
Yeah, so it's really the biggest one is the small margin in New Jersey between Harris and Trump, which was completely unexpected. Now, if you say that to a Trump person, they will say they expected it, and they will say you just didn't see it. But I don't think anybody could have predicted that we'd be talking about a 4-point race between the two of them. Certainly, Kamala Harris is going to carry New Jersey, has carried New Jersey, but by a far smaller margin, less than 200,000 votes. And that's just not something anybody ever saw coming. And then if you peel it back a little bit, there's even more surprises because she wound up maybe losing Somerset County, losing Passaic County, counties that have delivered pretty solid Democratic votes, really went for Trump this time. And so I think Democrats have to really scratch below the surface and find out what happened, not just in this election now, but in the closer than expected election for Governor Murphy in 2021. We're in the same cycle there where we've had the tightest gubernatorial race and the tightest presidential race that we've had in a generation. And Democrats have to figure it out in time for this race that's coming up next year for governor.
Yeah, so when you look at the Andy Kim, Curtis Bashaw election results, still Trump, again, and the numbers haven't all been certified yet. Trump within 4 or 5 points of Kamala Harris. Curtis Bashaw, Andy Kim, single digits, 8 points.
Which is unusual for us too, yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
I mean, because you look at the history of how long it's been since we've elected a Republican, going back, as we've said, to the 70s.
1972, is the last time a Republican was elected. And really, you would have to say that Curtis Bashaw got closer than maybe anybody since Bob Franks. And so this is a really definitely an interruption to the trend here. Whether or not it is going to change the trend, you never know that until you get in the rearview mirror. You never know that until later. But it can be a deviation from the trend, or it can be the start of a new trend. And certainly Andy Kim, a very popular guy who's carved out the reformer position, just a decent human being position, as we saw in our debate and January 6th. So he was able to sort of separate himself from whatever else was going on in the state this time.
Yeah. When it comes to the congressional races, the one that we were most closely watching was the 7th congressional race. Incumbent Tom Kean, he was able to win re-election to that seat against the Democrat challenger, Sue Altman. But again, this was one Democrats thought that they could win. Are the polls getting it wrong, or is something else going on that perhaps the polls are not picking up on?
No, the polls are getting it wrong. And in this case, what they got wrong, and they have always gotten wrong when it comes to Trump, they got it wrong in 2016, in 2020, and in 2024, is that they fundamentally didn't understand what the composition of the electorate was going to be, how Republican it was going to be, how friendly for Trump it was going to be, which voters Trump was going to bring out, and which voters Harris was going to bring out. So if you start your poll from the position that it's going to be a Republican +4 environment, which is what we wound up with, you're going to get a very different sample and a very different poll and a very different result than if you start with a Democratic +10 or +15 environment. And so pollsters essentially are not modeling the right electorate. They're not getting the right electorate that they ultimately wind up with on election day.
Yeah, and when it comes to the 9th congressional district, when we go up and we look at Nellie Poe versus Billy Primpa, that too, that's Hudson County, parts of Hudson County, and that one again was closer than people expected. But when you look more closely at the numbers and you see how well, and in that area that should be just a complete sweep for Democrats, how well Donald Trump did there, and again how Billy Primpa he came fairly close in a seat that should have been pretty easy for Nellie Poe.
Yeah, and I'm looking at maybe 3 reasons so far, right? One is that Latino voters went bigger for Trump than we have ever seen them go before for a Republican candidate. And so where is that going to be pronounced the most and seen the most? In heavily Hispanic counties and cities. And so Passaic County, one of the biggest Latino populations, Hispanic populations that we have in the state. And so you saw it there and you felt it there. The second reason, large Muslim population. One of the largest in the country, as far as the county goes, outside of Michigan, where you saw Harris struggle with Muslim voters there. And so I think we're seeing some of that. And then the third reason is just that Democrats in Passaic are not performing as they need to perform. They are delivering smaller margins over the course of multiple elections. They don't get out their vote. They haven't been getting out their vote. They're really not doing what they need to do to contribute to the Democratic majority statewide. And so you're seeing these smaller margins that in many cases start in Passaic County.
So you think Democrats are more or less thinking, it's a blue state, what's the point? I'm not going to go out to early vote. I don't want to wait in these really long lines. And Republicans really did a better job at the get out the vote effort. Is that what you're saying?
I think they did. Yeah, I think a lot of Democrats sat on their hands and weren't given a compelling reason to get out and vote anyway. They didn't get the doors knocked. They didn't get the phone call. They didn't get, we heard a lot about this very sophisticated Kamala Harris get out the vote operation nationwide. I am not sure we saw any evidence that that worked here in New Jersey.
Yeah. So when it comes to looking at this election, and again, we're going to be tearing through the data, really, looking closely at it as the who, what, and where, why of it. But already looking ahead to the governor's race, 2025. This was a good night for Republicans. How energizing do you think this is for them? Do you think this could be a fluke? Is it going to be, as David Wildstein was addressing in one of his articles, the new norm? Or is it too early to tell?
Well, in some ways, it's too early to tell. But one thing we can tell already is what you asked me about first, which is enthusiasm. Does this make New Jersey Republicans feel like they have the wind at their sails going into the big enchilada in New Jersey, always the governor's race? And the answer to that is almost certainly yes. They feel like they were within striking distance of, the first time in over 30 years having New Jersey go Republican at the presidential level. They certainly were within, a couple of points of having that happen in the Governor Murphy race in 2021. So they feel like they've got a shot here. They feel like they've got the wind at their sails and that they are enthusiastic, they're fired up, they're ready to go. The question as to whether or not it's the new norm, I don't think we can know that yet. And one of the reasons we can't know that yet is because this is a presidential turnout. This is a presidential election. Fundamentally, those races are different than the turnout that you get when you're running for governor or the turnout you get when you're voting for the legislature. And so we just don't know yet whether there are more Republicans. I mean, we know over the course of a couple elections, we can say there are more Republicans, but is it a collapse in Democratic support? Are they fewer of their voters coming out? That's what we really have to dig deep and find out. But right now, absolutely, Republicans are feeling like they're onto something here.
Right, and we have so many independent voters in New Jersey as well. It's also been said the presidential election is a bit of a warm-up for the governor's race in New Jersey because it is all, But is that more the insiders that get jazzed up about the governor's race and that turnout? Is that something that we're paying a little bit more attention to? Because you're talking about how the presidential electorate is going to be electorate will be very different than the governor's race. But
it's a good question. That's a fair question.
There are only two governors up for election next year: New Jersey and Virginia.
Fair question. Yep, you're absolutely right. You're right. For insiders, we're fired up. We're interested because we know how important that governor's race is and how important the governor is to governing in New Jersey, right? The most powerful governorship in the country, we always say. And I think justifiably so. But you're right when you say that, look, there's a contraction of the media. There's less ability to pay attention to anything that's going on stateside, right? And so, so what I think will fire people up is you're going to have multiple Republicans running for governor in the primary. You're going to have multiple Democrats. You're going to have a full field, and they are going for broke here. And so I think there is going to be a lot of attention on this race next year, and whether or not it makes independent voters, unaffiliated voters, Democrats, Republicans, whether or not it fires them up, I guess remains to be seen. But I think that they're also going to get fired up by the energy that they see and the campaigns that they see, and then it sort of becomes a self-fulfilling thing.
Yeah, do you think that Donald Trump having his golf club here in New Jersey, being a bit of a Jersey guy, even though property in New York and Florida, do you see him getting involved, supporting, campaigning, being actively involved for New Jersey's race for governor next year?
It's a great question. And, you could argue it both ways. You could say, look, he is the guy who has come closer to toppling the giant New Jersey than, the solid Democratic New Jersey than anybody has gotten in a generation. He clearly was tantalized by that possibility because he talked about it many times in the campaign trail this year in the swing states. Oh, we may win New Jersey. So he is tantalized by that. And if he decides that he wants to finish the job, if New Jersey Republicans can convince him that he has a role to play here, I think you will. We also saw, dare I say, some of the impacts of age here, a little bit of running out of juice at the end. I think it's too early to tell how lively and enthusiastic and how much of a role he's going to want to play on an ongoing basis in races that are not his own. He was saying at the end, this is the last time, we're going to be together like this in these rallies and things. So maybe he's just done with this phase of wholesale retail politicking, and maybe he will put out the tweets that endorse a candidate, but maybe that's as much as we're likely to see.
Well, I guess we're about ready to find out, because the race for governor 2025, it's on. It's already on. Micah Rasmussen, the Rebovich Institute for New Jersey Politics at Rider University. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Laura.
And that is going to do it for today. I'm Laura Jones. Thanks so much for watching New Jersey Politics. We look forward to seeing you back here next time.
Some of the biggest challenges I face as a student athlete is managing my athletic work and my schoolwork.
To prevent our student athletes from falling into academic distress, we created a program called Gamer. Each team works with an athletics academic liaison to increase graduation and retention rates.
The turning point that I saw is my grades went up.
What has helped me the most is definitely tutoring. My academics have just skyrocketed.
The ultimate goal is for our student athletes to have that championship moment on the field and day of graduation.